Welcome to the Film Florida podcast. I'm John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Before we get to our interview, if you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org. Please also consider going to our website and donating $20.25 for our 2025 fundraising campaign. Visit the Film Florida merchandise page at filmflorida.creator-spring.com to purchase Film Florida t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, and more. All merchandise proceeds go to the Film Florida Filmmaker Grant and Scholarship Fund. Donny Herran is a graduate of UCF, an accomplished producer, production executive, and executive in charge, and is currently a senior vice president of production for Paramount. Early in his career, he produced content for Disney, ABC, Fox, and Discovery Channel, while venturing into independent filmmaking, including being part of the Oscar-winning film Monster. For the second half of his career, Donny joined the production team at Paramount, overseeing hit premium scripted shows such as Yellowstone, Lioness, and Mayor of Kingstown, along with unscripted franchises The Challenge, Love and Hip Hop, Martha and Snoop Potluck Dinner Party, and Basketball Wives, just to name a few. We talk all of this and more on this episode of the Film Florida podcast. Here's my conversation with Donny Herran. Welcome to the Film Florida podcast, Donny.
Thank you. Thank you, John. I really appreciate getting a chance to be here.
So give us your backstory. Help the audience get to know you a little bit.
I am a son of immigrants. I'm really proud to say that out loud. My father from Ecuador, my mother from Cuba. I was born in Chicago, as well as you are, as I learned just now. I'm raised, though, ultimately in South Florida in a small farming community south of Miami named Homestead, which basically got its notoriety from being eviscerated by Hurricane Andrew in '92.
Right.
We lived a very modest lifestyle. We didn't have a lot, but we felt like we were fully rich and a lot of fun times as a kid. And I knew from a very, very young age what I wanted to do with my life. I felt this pull towards the arts. I spent a lot of time drawing and writing. My dad would always knock on my bedroom door about 10, 11 o'clock at night, telling me go to sleep. And I was on the typewriter, just kind of typing away different stories, and ultimately led to directing my friends in home movies. Again, it was super apparent about what I wanted to do growing up, ultimately to inspire people through storytelling and filmmaking. And for that, I felt, super blessed about, having a purpose. Even today, as I go through my career and I look back, getting ready for this conversation, I realized that there's been so much challenge and so much doubt that I've had as I've made some shifts and some pivots along the way. But the purpose and inspiration that I had, even as a kid, still kind of drives me forward, gives me confidence, gives me direction, and keeps me moving forward ultimately. Eventually, as a young kid, I started to sneak my way onto film sets, trying to get some jobs, learning from work, spying from behind the scenes. I started shooting some short films, formed the film club at Florida International University, and then eventually made my way to UCF film program.
Yeah, talk a little bit about what drew you to UCF and how that experience kind of prepared you for your career in the film industry.
Yeah, I mean, prior to that, I was still kind of in this place where I knew what I wanted to do, but I wasn't having the courage to actually do it. And so while I was at FIU, I started pursuing some pre-law work, and then finally just decided to apply to UCF film program, submitted all of the documents and photos and short films that I had at that point, and I got accepted. And I finally felt like this was the calling and the push that I needed to really prove myself that I was ready for this endeavor. And again, ultimately accepted into the Nicholson School of Communication and Media, aka the UCF Film School, in '98. It's a graduate class of 2000. I was a senior the year The Blair Witch was released, famously produced by graduates of the film school. And I still remember sitting in a 3-hour kind of pre-screening of the movie, wondering what it was. Mm-hmm. Ultimately became the phenomenon that it is and put the school on the map. But prior to that, as a student, I think I'm one of the last classes that likely cut on film, that shot on film. We shot on 16 millimeter cameras, and we edited on moviolas and a Steinbeck, both of which were absolutely essential parts of my development as not only a crew member, but ultimately as where I am today as a studio executive. I mean, there's really nothing more painstaking than having to load your film in a camera bag in the dark, or debating each cut on your negative, knowing how precise you have to be. I mean, these are all lessons of patience and they gave you a practical sense of understanding of the mechanics of the production. So now when I'm having a conversation with a director or a producer or an editor, I have a better understanding of where they're coming from because I've been in their place, albeit in a very small scale in school, but still having a sense of their struggles or the goals that they're after and what they need to get there. Film school still is very much a big part of my life. I'm still very much in communication with a lot of the students and with the program. And I know there's a ton of debate about whether attending film school is necessary to achieve success in the industry. But for me personally, it was good. I appreciated a community of filmmakers coming together to collaborate on ideas. And again, at that time in my life, and sometimes for many people, you're still trying to validate your decisions in your life and where you're going and ultimately your purpose. So here were 30 other students searching for that same validation. And so ultimately we shared a similar vision. It was harmonious, it was competitive, and it was an absolute opportunity to kind of test your skills and test your purpose. And I'm still very good friends with a lot of my film school graduates today. We continue to kind of inspire one another in the projects that we do, and jockeying for for a little bit of excitement and competition in that. But yes, it was an endeavor that I was glad that I got a chance to take on, and it set me up for where I am today.
Yeah, and after UCF early in your career, you produced content for Disney, ABC, Fox, Discovery Channel, while also venturing into independent filmmaking. We'll touch a little bit on the filmmaking in a bit, but share a little bit about some of the standout projects that you worked on early in your career that kind of helped set the stage.
For sure. Now, and to just back up a little bit, because I don't want to give the impression I jumped right out of college into the work. I mean, it did take some years.
Sure.
I would say I ultimately had about three phases of my career to date. There was the student life, the freelance life, and the studio life where I'm at today. And the earliest phase was really the fun but messy one. We were students. We were taking pro bono work wherever we could, but it was fun, juvenile but fun, and it built us a little street cred. It gave us a little insight into the business side of it all. While I was doing that, and as a student, I also took an internship at Nickelodeon Latin America, which I cannot stress enough the importance of an internship and paying your dues coming up. It was a great experience. I highly recommend it for people coming up. I spent a lot of time with the interns at my company, ensuring that they have access to leadership and opportunities for growth. But I parlayed that internship into a coordinator position, and then a few years after that into associate producer role, working on scripted content for Nickelodeon. Sadly, eventually, Nick closed its doors, and I found myself in a good way at a boutique house in Orlando called Lightship Entertainment.
Sure.
They primarily focus, if you're familiar with Lightship and Andy Parra,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
great company, great people. It was such a fantastic experience. They primarily produced at the time content for Disney, including some behind the scenes rides and the Disney Christmas Parade. And this was a chance for me coming out of film school and coming out of this kind of like student life experience to really start working in a way where I was wearing multiple hats. I would write host copy, I would cast extras, I would direct a segment, and then I would pull the water cooler. I mean, it was a hands-on experience, absolutely humbling, but gave such an appreciation for the many, many rules that a production has to offer. And it was at that point that I started that freelance life or that freelance phase of my career, bouncing from show to show, growing in my role. I mean, starting off as a camera PA and then making my way up to a line producer. By that time, yes, I was working with mostly majors like Disney and ABC and Fox between Florida and Los Angeles. A lot of different unscripted programs. I wouldn't say they were all notable shows, but certainly notable experiences.
Hmm.
Especially working with the majors, there's a certain level of crew that you're working with at that point, and they tend to sniff out the weakness or the newbies quickly. So you need to show up with your A game, and if not, they will eat you up alive. And that happened to me quite a few times growing up, but necessary as you start to get those notches on your belt. And ultimately, it was here in that world of working on those types of shows where I started to gain much more experience overseeing larger crews, managing sizable budgets, dealing with the day-to-day operations of a show, both in the field and in the office. And I was no longer just responsible for me and my work, but also for like 1 to 200 others and ensuring that they were working cohesively and collaboratively towards the same goal.
And we mentioned a little bit about your success with independent films, and somewhere in this area of your career as well, you were involved with the Oscar-winning Project Monster. Share a little bit about what it was like to work on this production and how it felt to ultimately receive the honors that it did.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. I don't really know if I felt I received such an honor,
Sure,
but
but you were
yes,
part of it.
yes, absolutely. I mean, it was a great experience to be part of a project that ultimately received so much positive attention and recognition, obviously, for the talents in front and behind the screen. I remember that just before I moved to Los Angeles in '04, there was this small indie crewing up in Orlando starring Charlize Theron and Christina Ricci, and at the time, an unknown director named Patty Jenkins. And the town is small, so there's a fever behind any kind of production that comes up. So like many of us, we were desperate to get on. I happened to know the UPM, and he sat me in the accounting department of all places, which consisted of basically the controller and myself. Now, I had no experience in accounting, absolutely no experience in payroll. So I spent a lot of times making mistakes and making up for mistakes. I mean, there clearly wasn't even enough whiteout for the mistakes I made, but it was a good experience. I mean, to be that close to something that received so much recognition and attention was fantastic. Now, I never found myself in the accounting department again, but I always take away a good experience, and I have such an appreciation for our production and our corporate finance teams. I mean, they're truly heroes. It was, I think, also the first movie I actually received the credit for. I think it was an accounting PA title. I remember sitting in the audience and finally seeing my name pop up, and I was like, "Oh, I made it!" But overall, good. I think probably what came from that even more so was that it elevated a few others like Patty Jenkins. But there was a producer that I met on the project, and he was the key producer on that. He was the first Hollywood producer I got a chance to meet. And when I finally made it out to LA, he gave me an opportunity to produce a movie,
Mm.
which once again, I had absolutely no experience in doing. So I had more confidence than anything, but he trusted me based on the relationship that we had. And we did this small, low budget film. This is with a friend of his that decided he wanted to write, direct, and finance his life story. And the director then hired his best friend as the DP who had only shot a National Geographic series prior to that, had never actually lit humans before. So I spent a lot of nights at the end of each shoot on the phone venting to my producer about the movie. And as a producer, talking to a young production executive coming up, he was saying, "Look, is the director happy?" And knowing that he was, I would say yes. And he says, "Is the director getting what you're getting, what he wants?" And I would say yes. And he says, "Then, well, you're doing your job, kid. Keep doing it." So
Mhm.
we finished the film and we screened it. And he was like, "Donnie, you did a great job managing that budget, and I appreciate you ensuring that my friend did not spend more than he needed to make. But the movie stinks, and you should have spent a lot more money." And it was an eye opener. I mean, that was probably one of the first real lessons that I learned, that a producer's role exists between what a project costs and what people are willing to spend on it. And you have to kind of bridge that gap and find the means to produce a content that resonates, maybe something that resonates so well that people aren't so concerned about the price tag. But it was certainly an opportunity, and I have Monster to thank for that.
Excellent. Now, you currently serve as the Senior Vice President of Production at Paramount. Make sure I have the title right. How did you find yourself into that role? And tell us a little bit about your day to day.
Yeah, it's a big role. It's a big title, to say the least. It's a big title. Senior Vice President of Physical Production for MTV Entertainment Studios, Paramount, and Showtime Media Networks. After the freelance world and after moving to LA, I started the studio phase of my career. That's that third phase,
Hmm.
uh, right around 2007. I came back to Viacom, having worked at Nick prior, but now at VH1 as a production manager. And I primarily oversaw a number of their unscripted series, reality, and as well a handful of projects that they had. And as the years progressed, my group expanded, ultimately becoming MTV Entertainment, producing content for multiple brands within the company and outside through the studio. I have to say that I've been extremely blessed throughout all the years to have had great leadership. My boss, Carrie Flint, who's the one boss that I've had now for almost 20 years, has given me all the opportunities to grow in my position in my slate. So very thankful for that. And as well as having the most dedicated colleagues and teams supporting me, really making me look great after day. But those are the key pieces, because other than that, you're just attacking the different shows. every single day. You're attacking different problems every single day, and hopefully that you gain enough wins in that to grow some notoriety yourself. And then again, having support above and below you, generating some momentum, getting you more visibility, ultimately led me to grow in my titles and my responsibilities over the years. So yeah, a typical day for an SVP in production management at the studio can be quite a frenzy. I mean, we do everything, or I would say I do everything from reviewing and noting budgets, plans, cash flow projections for the year, reviewing and approving time cards, PO, location agreements, talent contracts. And then it starts to get a little bizarre, negotiating a deal for a loft space for the writer's room in the UK, transporting batteries during a terrorist strike in a foreign country, managing crew grievances with the HR, addressing why safety wasn't properly prepped for a stunt, filing claims for why a camera exploded on set. It really ranges from day to day. And when people tend to ask me, especially those in my family, like, yeah, you have such a great job. You work with all these actors and directors. I generally am not working closely with those actors and directors. They're certainly a part of the production, but the parts that I deal with is everything else, the peripheral around that. So when you drive by a set, I always like to say that when you see all the trucks there and you see the cameras and the lights and the crew, that's my job. That's where you see what I do. I help to take what's on the script and then budget, crew, schedule, and plan and execute all of those elements, while I also rely on a lot of other very, very talented individuals and department heads and crew to help collaborate and piece it all together. In my world inside the studio, I like to say that production management is the hub of a wheel, with the spokes that radiate out and connect to every department. So ensuring that we're all aligned and moving forward cohesively on a project or on an initiative or whatever it is that the company is looking after. So, but yeah, it's a variety of different experiences every day that a production management exec or production exec tackles. And again, it speaks to that time at Lightship where you're doing everything from directing a segment to, again, setting up the crafty. It never changes. You just have to be humble and approach it in a professional way.
So you handle pretty much all the non-glamorous stuff.
I tend to. I mean, I do get to go to some of the premieres, I'll say. So, but I like to be a little bit more behind the scenes. That's where I find my excitement.
I certainly can relate to that. Donny, you've worked on a number of titles people would certainly recognize. Yellowstone, Mayor of Kingston, Hit the Floor, Single Ladies, along with unscripted franchise like The Challenge, Love and Hip Hop, Martha and Snoop Potluck Dinner Party, T.I. and Tiny, The Family Hustle, and Basketball Wives, just to name a few. Do you have any fun behind the scenes stories that you can share from any of these projects or other projects that you've worked on?
When you say that slate, I'm immediately impressed, and I'm like, I did all that. Yeah, no, it's again, I've had a fortunate career, working at the company now for almost 20 years on a diverse slate of projects, again, with incredible partnerships in front and behind the camera. There are quite a lot of stories, but I think if I had to tell one, and one that I do tell quite a bit, which is, I think it's funny and it's very personal to me, is that I worked on this project some years ago for the studio for Fox. And I was a second. This was a John Landis project, very famous director and producer. So again, to get on a set like this was a bit of a win altogether. And as a second, I was responsible for the call sheets. And one day, I accidentally misspelled his name. I cardinal sin for a film student. I missed the H in John, just rushing a little too fast through it. And so he called me into his office and he lectured me about his legacy and his contributions to the film, and ultimately how could I misspell his name. It was ultimately quite benign, and I actually enjoyed it because I had this one-on-one opportunity to work with him. But when I was ordered into his office, one of the first times I was actually in the production office, I met a young woman that was the assistant coordinator at the time. Her name was Carrie, and we hit it off. We became friends. But because I was always on set and she was always in the office, I never had the opportunity to really see her. So I misspelled his name again. Was the only catalyst to actually push me back into the office. And at this time that I got to go back in, he wasn't as nice.
Hmm.
Uh, at this point, he thought maybe I was doing it on purpose, which I was. And it was a short run, so I didn't get dismissed or fired or anything like that, but I did have to take a few lashings from that. But ultimately, Carrie and I started to date and we got married. We started a family and we lived together in Los Angeles. And I guess I have John to thank for that.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Amongst the many things we all have to thank John Landis for.
Yes, of course.
So you mentioned the diversity in your projects, and the work spans many different genres. Does your approach to the work shift depending on the genre?
That's a great question. What I always say to my team is that production does not have to be perfect, but it must be flexible. So, yes, you have to possess flexibility in the approach depending on the format, the genre, even the specific show. For specifically in the world that I work in, having overseen reality content, unscripted content, there's a much more allowance for creative to flow during production. Stories need time to organically evolve. And so your approach as an executive may be to allow more flexibility, longer schedule, more cameras to capture the moments, more time in the edit to find the story, etc. So your plan, i.e., your schedule and your budget, should speak to that. For scripted, it's a much more regimented approach. It's locked in by the script. So you punch in and you punch out. The challenge there really is to get everything on the page, on schedule, and on budget. And obviously, for it all to work. For premium scripted, you're working with a much higher caliber cast and crew. And so that requires a more refined approach than what generally comes with maybe an unscripted reality show. So yes, and by the way, obviously I'm way oversimplifying it, but while the role of the producer and the production executive is somewhat fixed, you need to have flexibility in addressing a plan or a problem so that every show to some degree almost feels fresh and brand new actually. And that's part of the excitement of it all.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Now you have extensive experience with production management through all your different roles, pre and at Paramount, but you've been responsible for in-house and third-party productions and have been able to deliver high quality content in larger scale productions. How did you build the skill sets necessary? You don't just wake up one day and have that, on your abilities.
You're right. As much as I tried to pretend that I did when I was offered some of those jobs that I had no experience in taking. So, but yes, I would say there's really no training like on the job training. Again, film school was a great opportunity and it provided me such a solid base, but the full burden of consequence isn't really present at that time. Not until you have to make real world decisions that cost you money, cost you time, potentially could cost lives, depending on the nature of your production. So I would say you have to be a student in every level of your career. No matter how high you rise, you need to be always open to learning and growing. My father, again, growing up in Florida, he was a mechanic and he spent a lot of time taking things apart and putting things back together. He would always say, don't pay for a service that you could do yourself. So as a child, I spent a lot of time trying to do the same, trying to figure things out myself. We didn't have YouTube like we do now, which I rely on quite a bit.
Hmm.
Um, but so if you didn't have anyone to ask for help, you needed to read a manual or you just had to rely on your own intuition and a little trial and error to learn. So growing up through the industry as well was all about constantly learning, being open to taking feedback, asking questions, never afraid of really making mistakes. And through that process, building new skill sets along the way. I like to say that praise is important because it gives you a short-term high, but it's really proper feedback. Even if it feels harsh,
Hmm.
that can be a greater catalyst for growth and will definitely last a lot longer. So you always have to be willing to put yourself out there. Don't think about it as you're just taking a risk, but rather you're making an opportunity for yourself, for yourself to grow, to learn, whether it's learning a new skill set or climbing into a new role entirely. Invest in yourself. And again, if you're as fortunate as I have been during my career, you'll have amazing people that surround you, whether they're your boss or your colleague, or even someone that actually works for you that will give you an opportunity to learn and lead in a way that allows you to build on those skill sets. It's an organic process. You just have to be willing to reach for it, willing to accept it, and constantly working on it every single day.
Yeah, it's great insight. That really is. Now, this might be an impossible question, but is there one project that you've been involved with in your time where you sat back and said, I can't believe I'm involved with this project?
Most reality shows where I've watched people try to kill themselves generally say, I can't believe I'm part of this project. But I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah, no, there have been some really career defining moments, especially in the last few years, getting to work with some incredible talent that I've admired, producers, writers, directors, actors, certainly some like pinch me moments. I can't talk about them all here,
Mm.
but if you see some of the projects that I'm on, these are some of the talent that really inspired me to get into the industry. So being on the same set or even having a conversation with them, I do start to think, I can't believe I'm working on this project. But I don't get to pick what I produce. You know, I'm assigned a role and I'm assigned a show and I execute on what they tell me. So today it's scripted, tomorrow it could be a game show. It really varies. What I have come to love and appreciate is not necessarily what we make, but how we make it. So it's the planning, it's the execution of a project that really, really excites me. The results are obviously absolutely essential, but not every show resonates with an audience or even finds an audience these days. So it can be defeating at times for when that happens. So for me, it has to be about what I can contribute to a project, how I can influence a change, how my decisions and my planning positively impact and generate the results that we're looking for. Every time I get assigned a project, I'm in the middle of it. I'm on location. And I generally do say, I can't believe I'm working on this project because I know how fortunate I am to be part of an industry built on imagination and it celebrates creativity and the arts. And here I am, just another part of that influence every single day. So whether it was unscripted or scripted or a game show or a talk show or a documentary, I think every opportunity that I have to work on it, I usually feel pretty blessed and excited to be a part of it. And so, yeah, pinch me moments all day long.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about the evolution of the industry. A lot's happened, since you and I started working on lightship entertainment projects back in the late 90s. What advancements have made the most impact on your day to day?
The only thing that's consistent in my industry, in our industry, is change,
Yeah.
right? It's always changing. And you're right. I mean, we've come a long way from slipping call sheets under doors. There's a lot that has been very impactful, or the word being disruptful of late. I mean, streaming is a big one. The content machine that was created to advance us into this binge culture, albeit maybe exciting for some, but it's left just a lot of chaos in its wake. Everything from a declining cable industry to major struggling to basically keep their head above water. There's some positivity around. I mean, there's been a lot more productions at times to keep up with the demand of the market, but it's also a form of appears to be like a means to an end.
Hmm.
The streamers, unlike the cables, right? They shelve massive libraries of content, so we're not only competing with new programs, but content from 50 years ago as well. So that helps fuel oversaturation. That can lead to fatigue. You know, so many of these companies are still jockeying for position, and then you have new content creation that's not, I guess, more refined as some of the traditional means. And from what I was reading recently, it was taking over 50% of Gen Z viewers because they relate a lot more to the content, whether it be YouTube or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever is out there right now that my kids are probably watching when they get off of school. It's driving away eyeballs from traditional means, which further tends to rob from the industry that we're in. And then finally, you have AI having just entered the chat in a way that's probably more profound than the last two. But you couple all of that with COVID strikes, inflation, tariffs, and we may be reaching a critical mass of where this industry is going. I mean, the paradigm has shifted dramatically, and it's hard to tell what direction we'll be in. I mean, I do have some hope. I mean, that sounds all doom and gloom at the moment because right now the industry is getting a hit from a number of different directions. I do think there's going to be great opportunities for independent producers and directors to create content that's not necessarily under the thumb of a major, so long as they can ensure that they can raise capital for it and find means to produce it on their own. The same way with animation. I think that some of these current applications out there, AI specifically, will help motivate artists to create some great content in new ways. And I think for the younger generation, I think that their contribution hopefully could be that while they're more focused on content that's not built from a traditional mean, is that they'll find a way to kind of bridge all of these different scenarios and applications in a way that does actually create content that's not just solely for them, but for a larger audience. It's a shifting of the paradigm, but also an evolution of the process as a whole. It's a little scary,
Mhm.
but ultimately somewhat exciting to see what we'll be able to generate in the next few years.
Donny, in your opinion, what makes a producer great at their role?
There's certainly a lot of attributes that makes a producer great. Similar to, I think, to many professions. You want somebody that's educated, detailed about the process, they care about the results, they know their history, they have an opinion of the future for sure. They're invested in the people they work with and the partnerships they form, and they have a purpose. They're purpose driven and they have goals that they set to meet out. I like to think that that great producer, even at a higher level, can be a gift. It's a talent that they're born with, much like an athlete. So this is an individual that has all of those attributes, all those qualities, but is also able to balance them in such a flawless way, multitasking from 1,000 feet up, and then meticulously noting the most granular items with boots on the ground precision, and gives you the impression that they're doing all of this without breaking a sweat. Maybe even appear like they're laughing through it. These are the very fine producers that you're seeing on all different formats and genres that are out there, not just the big movies, but also in the unscripted side and documentaries. I've seen them, I've met them, I've been in all of them. I'm certainly not one of them, but I strive for that greatness every day. I work on that. I think if you at least work hard in that direction, you might find excellence. That puts some food on my table, so I'm happy just to be part of the world that producers are working in.
And then on the crew side, you've been involved in one way, shape, or form with crewing projects for a long time, small projects all the way up to some of the biggest ones out there. When you're looking for crew, what is it that you're looking for?
The strategy of crewing really depends on the end game for me. So when I was a line producer, I'm hiring you based on your proven ability. Your resume and your references really have to say it all. But these are limited engagements. Movies and series are like a sprint versus, say, in the corporate setting or the studio setting that I'm in now. It's more of a marathon.
Mhm.
So, yes, you're still looking for qualified, skilled, credited humans, but you're also looking for individuals who want to grow, people who are willing to invest in you just as much as you're willing to invest in them. It's still very transactional, but the long-term scenario provides a lot more opportunity for mentorship and development. Now, ultimately, I'd say you still want individuals that show an interest. They do their homework about the role, about the company, about the product. They should come prepared to ask questions and, again, always learning. They should definitely take an interest in themselves. People who show up, that are prepared, that follow through before and after they get the job. Individuals who meet the standard but go above and beyond it. Those are the ones you're ultimately looking for. In the end, there's similarities between the crew you hire on your show and the crew you bring into your team inside a studio setting, but there's a long-term investment in the studio corporate side that's ultimately your goal, or I would say ultimately your goal should be that you are training and growing someone through mentorship that hopefully in the future has the ability to take your job. I know that sounds a little cannibalistic that they're eating you, but really that's what you want. You want to be able to grow people and develop them so that they're become the future leaders of tomorrow and that you're leaving your world better off than when you took it.
Yeah. Donnie, how can the audience learn more about you?
I think I've said everything that I am allowed to based on my NDA. Uh, what I would like to add here is that I definitely am passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about what I get to do every single day. I know there's a lot of people out there like that. I know that the industry right now is suffering. I work with a lot of incredible humans. in different forums that are struggling to either find a job or get elevated or maybe seek a new path entirely. And I share that experience as having been through all of that throughout my life, and know that I'm happy to always be someone to mentor, to answer questions. If anybody ever wants to reach out to me to just talk a little bit more shop, I'm a willing participant in this world that we're all a part of when it comes to the entertainment industry. I also want to add that I've been working closely with UCF in helping to promote more awareness about the film school and the alumni programs, ensuring that graduates and students are connected for mentorship opportunities and networking opportunities. And as part of that collaboration, we launched the Jeremy E. Evans Student Film Funds Award. It's an annual award given to help students defer some of the costs of their thesis projects while in the film school. This fund, which is solely based on donations, was created in honor and memoriam of an alumni, Jeremy Evans, who passed away a few years ago. Jeremy, like many of us, was passionate about telling stories that inspired people and provided opportunities for people to grow through them. He was a good friend of mine. He was a good friend of many of us that were in school with him. And we hope that this award honors him as well as helps pave the way for future filmmakers. So that's what I would love to put a spotlight on, is the passion of those that are with us and those that are no longer with us, and the opportunities to help people come up, help defer some costs, help get a networking opportunity, help get a job in the future. If anything, that's what I'd like to be a part of, and what I would like people to know about me.
And is there anywhere people can go to learn more about that or contribute?
Yes, and I will provide you the link for the site where people can learn more about the Jeremy E. Evans Student Film Funds Award.
And we will include that in the description of the episode of the podcast once we get that.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Donny, this has been tremendous. We appreciate you being with us today and to tell your story and for remembering your Florida roots, of course. Thanks so much for being on the Film Florida podcast.
John, it's been an absolute honor. Again, I appreciate you taking the interest, and I hope that this inspires future filmmakers to come.
Thanks for listening to the Film Florida podcast. For more information about Film Florida, go to filmflorida.org and like or follow our social media pages. If you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org. Please also consider going to our website and donating $20.25 for our 2025 fundraising campaign. Check out the Film Florida merchandise at filmflorida.creator-spring.com, and please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.